Good day, everyone. Welcome to Mahadomia Central Tutorial. In this video, we'll solve and explain JUPEB Government 2022 past question using Central Tutorial materials perfect for 2025 JUPEB candidates. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to support more helpful JUPEB content from Mahadomia. Now we're diving into the question of which we have here. And the first question here is, the core proponents of the social contract theory are, the correct answer is Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. The incorrect option, Plato, Bentham, and Hobbes, Aristotle, and me, Locke, Rousseau, and Socrates. Now, when we explain the social contract theory, the social contract theory simply means that the society, they came together to make an agreement between themselves in order to avoid chaos. And the proponents to this social contract theory are Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques. Thomas Hobbes believed that in a state of nature without government or law, life would be nasty, brutish, and short. In order to avoid this, man submits himself to authority in exchange for protection and security. While John Locke held that obligation to obey civil government under social contract theory was a condition upon protection of our natural rights of each person, including our life and property. While Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in his own statement, said, government exists to enforce sovereign will of society, and society is the real holder of power and not government. Now we move to number 2 question. We say the meeting of the legislature is usually brought to an end through the motion for. The correct answer is adjournment. Other options, propagation, dissolution, and suspension. Now, adjournment is a temporary suspension of legislative sitting. It may be for a short time break. It has resumed for where it stopped after the break. Now, when we explain propagation, why is it not the correct answer? Because in propagation is the formal ending of a legislative session. It is usually done by the head of state, which is the president. Then this dissolution refers to the complete end of legislative assembly, common in parliamentary system, especially before general election. So the answer is adjournment. And the explanation said, the meeting of the legislature is usually brought to an end through a motion for adjournment. It is a common parliamentary procedure where the session is temporarily suspended until a later time or date. It allows members to take a break to attend to other matters before reconvening. Question number 3. Nigeria adopted the presidential system of government for the first time during, and the correct option here is Second Republic. Other options, First Republic, Fourth Republic, Third Republic. Now, if you could remember very well, it was in the Second Republican Constitution that the presidential system of government was fully adopted. That was 1979, Second Republic. In the First Republican Constitution, though the president was there, but the Queen was still the head of state. But the Second Republican Constitution eliminated the Queen, and the president was now acting as the head of state and the prime minister as the head of government. The next question is the primary agent of political socialization is the correct answer is family. Other options, government, mass media, political parties. Now, even though these other options are perfectly correct. But every training begins in the family. Everything begins in the family. The teaching, education begins from the family before it moves to the society. So the primary agent of political socialization is the family. It is within the family that individuals first learn about political values, belief, and behavior. Families play a crucial role in shaping an individual political outlook and understanding of the political system. The next question is, an authority that is based on the supremacy of law is known as, and the correct answer we have here is legal rational authority. Other options which are incorrect: military authority, charismatic authority, and traditional authority. Now we'll explain legal rational authority and then we'll understand why it is the correct option. Legal rational authority is founded on a system of well-established laws and procedures. Now, it emphasizes the rule of law, where power is exercised through legally defined structure. Then the military power is based on force. They use force. Then when you talk about charismatic power is based on individual personal quality, like either is a good person or he's doing well, is wealthy. Then we'll talk about tradition. Power is based on custom. So the correct answer to that question is legal rational authority. Authority that is based on the supremacy of the law is known as legal rational authority. This form of authority is grounded in legal rules and regulation. It contrasts with charismatic authority based on personal charisma and traditional authority based on tradition or custom. Legal rational authority is common in modern bureaucracy system. We move to the next question, which says, the two principal actors in international relations are, the correct answer here is state and non-state actors. Other incorrect options, we have hard and soft actor, military and non-military actor, developed and developing actors. Now, state actors means sovereign countries with defined borders and governments, e.g., we have Nigeria and the USA. Then non-state actors refer to entities that influence international affairs but are not countries, such as NGOs, international organizations, like that. So it says state and non-state actor is the correct answer, simply because the two principal actors in international relations are state and non-state actors. State representing sovereign political entities interact with a variety of non-state actors such as international organizations, non-governmental organizations, like what I've explained. We move to number 7. One of the demerits of one-party system is that it encourages, the correct answer to this is dictatorship. The rest options, which are incorrect: democracy, reciprocism, and development. Now, one-party system actually leads to concentration of power in the hands of few, lack of political competition, which encourage dictatorship. Now, when you talk about reciprocism, refer to excessive bureaucracy. So the answer here is dictatorship. One-party system often leads to dictatorship because there is no opposition to check the ruling parties, which can result in authoritarian rule and lack of political freedom, like we have totalitarianism and Nazism. They are perfect example to this. Then the other question is, the term vessel is associated with which of the following? We have the correct option here is feudalism. Other incorrect option, socialism, capitalism, communism. Now, vassal was a person in medieval Europe who received land from a lord in exchange for loyalty and military service. Now, what is feudalism? Feudalism is an economic and social system where land was exchanged for loyalty and service. So, the vassal was a person in the medieval Europe who received the land from a lord in exchange for loyalty. So he gave the land to the vassal, and then in exchange for the land, he is loyal to the king. So the term vassal is associated with feudalism. In feudalism, a vassal was a person who served a lord in a military capacity, typically in exchange for land or other privileges. The hierarchical system characterized medieval European societies. The next question, public administration is different from private administration because the former is concerned with the state affairs, which is the correct answers. Other options, remote enterprises, corporate bodies, ethical affairs. Now, public administration is different from private administration because the former is concerned with state affairs. Public administration involves the implementation of government policies, the management of public resources to serve the public interest. It deals with the affair of functions, the government, and various levels. Now, we move to the next question, which is, in a capitalist system, the working class are referred to as, and we have the correct answer here is proletariat. Other incorrect options, slaves, the bourgeoisie, and the serfs. Now, bourgeoisie, why is it not the correct answer? The bourgeoisie are the capitalist class who owns and control all means of production. But the proletariats do not have means of production. They earn their living through wages and labor. They are the working class. When you talk about serf, they are associated with feudalism, then slaves, like the rest. In a capitalist system, the working class are referred to as the proletariat. The term proletariat donates the class of workers who do not own the means of production and must sell their labor to capitalists in exchange for wages. This concept is central to Marxist theories of class struggle. The next question is, military intervention in African democracies is said to be an aberration because they are, the correct answer is ill-trained for democratic governments, compared to wear complete uniform, mandated to head democratic system, very brutal in democratic system. The military intervention in African democracy is said to be an aberration because military personnel are ill-trained for democratic governments. They are not experienced people. The military primary training often focus on security and defense, and their involvement in governments may lack the skill necessary for democratic administration. You know, the military is just the use of force, power, and the rest. So they are not really well trained for any democratic administration. Move to the next question. Said, Nazism was an ideology promoted by, and the correct answer is Adolf Hitler. Other options which are incorrect, we have Benito Mussolini, Kenneth Wells, and Karl Marx. Now, Adolf Hitler was an ideology promoted by, Nazism was an ideology promoted by Adolf Hitler, a German. Now, Benito Mussolini actually promoted fascism. Then Kenneth Wells promoted federalism, and Karl Marx, communism and socialism. So Nazism was an ideology promoted by Adolf Hitler. Nazism is associated with the National Socialist German Worker Party, led by Hitler, who was characterized by extreme nationalism, racism, and authoritarianism. It played a significant role in the events leading to World War II. The next question is, a possible economic solution to insecurity in Nigeria can be achieved through, and the correct answer is tackling of poverty and unemployment. That's the first thing and the important thing. So the right options which are incorrect, creation of more states and local governments, that's not the issue, because if you create more states and then there's poverty and unemployment, then how are we going to tackle those issues? Then decimation of Boko Haram and Avengers, declaration of state emergency in Nigeria, which are incorrect. So a possible economic solution to insecurity in Nigeria can be achieved through tackling of poverty and unemployment, because if you tackle poverty and unemployment, then crimes will reduce, because most people, they commit crime due to the fact that maybe you want to kidnap somebody, they're just looking for money because there's no work. People are trying to tackle poverty and they want to be wealthy, and there's no employment, so people are actually suffering. So the best way to tackle those issues is actually to eliminate poverty and unemployment, addressing which is the root cause of insecurity in the country. We move to the next question, which is declaration of a state of emergency in Nigeria. Declaration of a state of emergency in Nigeria was done in which constitution? The correct answer is Littleton Constitution. Other options: McPherson Constitution, Richard Constitution, and Clifford Constitution. Now, Littleton Constitution, it was the first constitution to formally provide for the declaration of state of emergency. Now, Clifford Constitution 1922 introduced limited franchise voting. Then McPherson Constitution 1951 expanded regional autonomy. If you can remember vividly, that is 1951. So the first constitution to formally provide for declaration of state of emergency is actually the Total Constitution. So the declaration of state of emergency in Nigeria is associated with the Total Constitution. Littleton Constitution of 1954 allowed for the declaration of state of emergency in specific region, granting the British colonial authority special power during time of crisis or unrest. The next question. The first country in West Africa to experience a military coup was, and the correct answer is Togo. Other incorrect options: Benin, Ghana, Mali. Now, Togo was the first country to experience military coup, which occurred January 13, 1963. It led to the assassination of President Sylvanus Olympio. Now, Ghana held its first coup in 1966. Benin held their first coup in 1970, and Mali in 1968 after Togo. So Togo is the first country to experience military coup. The next question. The center of administration for the French colonial government in West Africa was, the correct answer here is Dakar. Other incorrect option: Rufisque, Gore, and Lomé. Now, Dakar is a Dakar is the center of administration for the French colonial government in West Africa. Now, Rufisque is a town near Dakar. Gore, an island known for known for its role in slave trade, and Lomé, the capital of Togo. So Dakar is actually the central place for administration for the French colony. So the center of administration for the French colonial government in West Africa was Dakar. Dakar, located in Senegal, served as a significant administrative and economic hub for French West Africa. It played a central role in the governance and coordination of French colonial activities in the region. Now, apartheid regime in South Africa was brought to an end in the year, the correct answer is 1994. Incorrect option: 1990, 1999, and 1998. The apartheid regime in South Africa was brought to an end in the year 1994. This marked the first democratic election in which all South Africans, regardless of race, were allowed to vote. Nelson Mandela became the first Black president, symbolizing the end of institutionalized racial segregation. The next question. A major factor that motivated the European invasion of Africa was economic revolution, which is the correct option. Incorrect option: industrial revolution. political revolution, and social revolution. So one of the main reasons why the European came to Africa was because of economic revolution. The fact African was the perfect place to actually develop and get a lot of economics. So they have to move down to Africa where they started their business, production, and the rest, and they were using Africa to make those goods and then they export them. So a major factor that motivated the European invasion to Africa was economic revolution. The scramble for Africa in the late 19th and early 20th centuries was driven by European powers seeking economic resources, including raw materials and new markets. Economic motives played a central role in colonial expansion. So they did not come for any other reason. But in that process, after coming to Africa, they discovered a lot of things and you know that, okay, they can establish here and get a lot of materials, raw materials, and expand their markets. The next question is, the transfer of political authority to the local government is known as? The correct answer is devolution. Other incorrect option, delegation, the concentration, and decolonization. Now, let's explain what devolution means. Devolution simply refers to formal transfer of political authority and power from a central government to a lower level, such as regional or local governments. So the transfer of political authority to the local government is known as devolution. Devolution involves the decentralization of political power from central government to local or regional authorities. It aims to empower local government and promote effective governance at the grassroots level. The next question is, the utilization of material and non-material resources to achieve the goal of the state describes. Correct option here is public administration. Other incorrect option, business administration, international relations, and local government. Now, the utilization of material and non-material resources to achieve the goal of the state describe public administration. Public administration involves the management and implementation of government policies, programs, and resources to meet the needs and goals of the state and its citizens. The next question, the normative approach to political analysis is, and we have the correct answer is prescriptive. Other incorrect option, scientific, empirical, and positivist. Now let's explain prescriptive. Prescriptive actually deals with what ought to be rather than what is. Now, the scientific, empirical, and positivist approach focuses on observable facts in data and object analyze. So, which makes it to be incorrect. So when you talk about prescriptive, it deals with what ought to be rather than what is. So the normative approach to political analysis is prescriptive. Yeah, the explanation said the normative approach to political analysis is prescriptive. It involves evaluating and recommending what ought to be in political matters. This approach explores ethical and moral principles to guide political decisions and actions. It contrasts with descriptive approaches that focus on analyzing what is and what ought not to be. We move to the next question, which is Pan-Africanism as an ideology led by the formation of, the correct answer is Organization of African Unity. Incorrect options, Southern African Development Commission, Economic Community of West African States, and lastly, Organization of African States. Pan-Africanism as an ideology led to the formation of the Organization of African Unity, OAU. The OAU was established in 1963 to promote unity and cooperation among African nations. It played a crucial role in the decolonization process and addressing common challenges faced by African countries. The next question, exclusive power in the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria is vested in the exclusive power. You know, we have the exclusive, we have the concurrent, and we have the regional or local. So the exclusive power in the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria is vested in the federal government, which is the correct answer. The incorrect option, state government, regional government, local government. State government, the concurrent is for both the central and the state government. E.g., they focus on labor, higher education, roads, etc. Then when you come to the local government, which is the regional, because regional and local, they are same thing. So when you talk about the local and the regional or local governments, they exercise their primary function dealing with local administration, like primary education, health, roads, and the rest too. So exclusive power in the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria is vested in the federal government. The Constitution delineates power between the federal and state governments. Exclusive power are those reserved for the federal government, including defense, foreign affairs, and currency issues, even labor, security, extend to that, higher education, and the rest, currency. So that's their focus. We move to the next question, which is Nigeria's first Republican Constitution was enacted in the year. The correct answer is 1963. Incorrect option 1960. 1960, that was when Nigeria gained independence. So it's incorrect because Nigeria was not a republican then. Other incorrect option 1961, 1964. So Nigeria's first Republican Constitution was enacted in the year 1963. This marked the transition from a British parliamentary system to a Republican form of government, whereby the Queen was no longer the head of state, rather it was the president. And then the Prime Minister was not the head of government. So the Constitution defined Nigeria as a republican with an elected president as the ceremonial head of state. But mind you, that did not usher in the first presidential system of government. It was in 1979 that we had our first presidential system of government was actually established. But yeah, having president, we still have the prime minister still heading the the prime minister in charge of the government, then the president in charge of head of state. When you come to the presidential system of government, which is 1979, you see the president acting as both, which is executive head, acting as the head of state and the head of government. Now we'll move to the next question. The basic feature of pre-colonial Nigeria eroded by the colonialists was the correct answer is autonomy of traditional ruler, unity of Nigeria state, economic prosperity of Nigeria, independence of Nigeria. The basic feature of pre-colonial Nigeria eroded by the colonialists was the autonomy of traditional rulers. 1963, president as the head of state, removing the governor general. That's 1960. So autonomy of traditional. The basic features of pre-colonial Nigeria eroded by the colonial was the autonomy of traditional rulers. Like in pre-colonial system of government, there was no British administration trying to direct them. They were just autonomy. They ruled themselves by themselves. No, they were not under any British colony. So they were just alone. So the basic features of pre-colonial Nigeria eroded by the colonialist was the basic feature of the pre-colonial. The basic feature of the pre-colonial Nigeria eroded by the colonies was the autonomy of traditional rulers before colonization. Traditional rulers had significant political administrative power within their respective territories. However, colonial rules introduced indirect rule systems that diminish the autonomy of traditional rulers. Sorry for that breakage. The function of the Nigeria Council of 1914 can be described as, the correct answer is advisory, incorrect option legislative, judicial, and lastly reformative. Now, advisory was established by Lord Lugard after the amalgamation of the Northern and Southern Protectorates, if you can remember very well. Their role was to advise the Governor General. Now, if you look at legislative, the people that were actually nominated, they don't have the power to make rules. They don't make laws. And in the judicial matter, there was no court. So you cannot make decisions. They were not making rules. And then there was no court, just traditional court. Then we have the reformative, which is the last incorrect option. The function of the Nigeria Council of 1914 can be described as advisory. The council served as the advisory body to the British colonial administration in Nigeria. It played a consultative role, offering recommendations on various issues, but lacked legislative or executive power. They don't have the powers to make laws, and they were not in charge. Lord Lugard was still a governor at that time. And then the European, they make laws for the region, for Northern and Southern Protectorate. So they don't have the powers to make laws. This was done by the Europeans. One of the major reasons advanced for the overthrow of regime of General Yakubu Gowon was the failure to, correct answer is, honor the promise to hand over power. Incorrect option, create new states in the Federation, promote some officer and the armed forces, persecute politician in detention. Now, General Yakubu Gowon had promised to return Nigeria to civilian rule. That was in 1976, but he failed to do that. So this led to the overthrow of General Yakubu Gowon because of his failure to actually honor his promise to hand over. So the explanation here is said one of the major reasons advanced for the overthrow of the regime of General Yakubu Gowon was the failure to honor the promise to hand over the certification, with the delay in transitioning to civilian rule and fulfilling promise contributed to political unrest and Gowon overthrow in 1975. The next question, the emirate system of administration is associated with, the correct answer here is unitary government. Incorrect options, federal government, confederal government, and lastly, military government. Now, confederal government means a group of sovereign states that agree to work together for certain purpose. Then in federal system of government, the administration is actually shared, is decentralized. We have the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. Then in military regime, in military just have to do with force, overthrowing of government, and the rest. So when you come to emirate system of administration, is highly centralized. It's highly centralized. And if you link it to unitary government is also actually highly centralized. That is, we have only one head. So the power is centralized, it's not divided just the way federal system is. And when you talk about confederal, it's totally different. A group of sovereign states that agree to work together for certain purpose. In military government, it's just force, overthrow of government, using all those things. So the emirate system of administration is best classified under a unitary system because power was centralized in the hands of the emir, who rules with absolute authority, although he delegated some responsibility to district heads So if you look at it closely with unitary system of government, it's actually the same. They are both centralized, but when you come to the rest, they are decentralized. The next question is the political neutrality of civil servants implies that they are. The correct answer is not aligned with any political party. Other incorrect options: actively involved in political activities, engineered, aligned with the party in power, remotely connected with political activities. The political neutrality of civil servants implies that they are not aligned with any political parties. If they want to do that, they have to resign. So civil servants are expected to carry out their duties impartially, irrespective of their political affiliation. This neutrality helps maintain the professionalism and integrity of the civil service in serving the government and the public. Next question, the philosophy that sees international relations as a struggle for power and the dominance of one state over other is realism. That's the correct answer. Other incorrect option, idealism, liberalism, and Marxism. Liberalism and Marxism. When you talk about realism, it holds that the states are the primary actor in international politics. Then you talk about idealism, focuses on cooperation, morality, and international law. So it's not the correct option. So the philosophy that sees international relations as a struggle for power and the dominance of one state over other is realism. Realism is a school of thought in international relations that emphasizes the role of power, national interest, and state sovereignty. It contrasts with idealism, liberalism, and other perspectives. The next question is major factor that undermine public confidence in the electoral process is. The correct answer is electoral malpractice. Other incorrect option, periodic election, free and fair atmosphere, and regular training of officials. Electoral malpractice is when elections are perceived as unfair or corrupt. Now citizens lose confidence in democracy and many disengage from political participation when there is electoral malpractice. So why election, periodic election, free and fair atmosphere, regular training of officials actually are the positive democratic principle, but electoral malpractice is not the answer. So then it undermines public confidence in the electoral process. So electoral malpractice such as vote ringing, ballots, stuffing, intimidation, and manipulation of results directly undermines the public trust in the electoral process. When elections are perceived as unfair or corrupt, citizens lose confidence in democracy and may disengage from political participation. That's apathy. So they will not show interest in any political activities because of electoral malpractice. Was the excess of voting when they will actually ring elections? So people get discouraged. We move to the next question. The founder of the leader of Unity Party of Nigeria was. The correct answer here we have Obafemi Awolowo. Other incorrect options: Ambrose Ali, Shehu Chagari, and Nnamdi Azikiwe. Now, Obafemi Awolowo was the founder and leader of the Unity Party, which was established in 1978 during Nigeria's Second Republic. Now, Obafemi Awolowo was the founder and leader of the Unity Party of Nigeria. He played a significant role in Nigeria political, advocating for federalism and regional autonomy. His leadership and contribution to the political landscape made him the correct answer. Now, if you talk about Ambrose Ali, he was a member of the UPN and the first civilian governor of Bende State. Now, Shehu Shagari, leader of the National Party of Nigeria and became Nigeria's first elected president in 1979. Then Nnamdi Azikiwe, he was the leader of the Nigeria People Party. Now we'll move to the next option, which is Lord Lugard became the British High Commission in the territory that later became Nigeria between, correct option is 1900 and 1906. Incorrect option, 1960 and 90, oh sorry, there's a mistake here, and 1990, 1900 and 1930, 1900 and 1945. So the correct answer is 1900 to 1906. Lord Lugard became the British High Commission in the territory that later became Nigeria between 1900 and 1906. This period marked a significant phase in the colonial history of Nigeria as Lugard played a key role in the amalgamation of Northern and Southern Protectorate. So which makes the answer 1900 and 1906. For the rest, 1960, that was when Nigeria gained her independence. The next question is, in pre-colonial West Africa, the kingdom of Fante, Yoruba, and Hausa were example of. The correct answer is states. Incorrect options, unions, countries, nations. Now, in pre-colonial West African, political organizations like the Fante, the Yoruba Kingdom, which is the Oyo Empire, and the Hausa city-states, they were all examples of states. Now, when you talk about union refers to a group of states or entities coming together for a common purpose, unions. Then when you talk about countries actually refers to nation states with defined borders and sovereignty, and even a government. And when you talk about nations share culture and language. They have a shared identity. That's nation, like the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Hausa. So in pre-colonial West Africa, the kingdom of Fante, Yoruba, and Hausa were examples of states. This entity had an organized political system which defined territory and government structure distinct from the modern concept of nations and union. We move to the next questions. The legislative approach to remove a president from office is called, and the correct option here is impeachment. Incorrect options, coup d'etat, ultra-vires, enthronement. Now let's explain impeachment. Impeachment is the constitutional and legislative process by which a president or other public officials are actually removed. They are removed from office. When you talk about coup, is illegal and forced cessation of power, usually by the military. Like the first Nigeria coup that took place in Nigeria was in 1966. Then we have ultra-vires, a Latin term which means beyond one's legal power or authority. The enthronement, formally installing someone into office, like coronation. Yes, that's a perfect example I can give. Then the legislative approach to remove a president from office is called impeachment. It is a constitutional process that involves charges against a sitting president for high crime and misdemeanor, and it's found guilty. If found guilty, it can lead to their removal from office. The next question is, the concept of federalism implies the centralization of power in states, which is correct. Other incorrect options, centralization of power in state, diminishing of power in a state, infusion of power in a state. Now, when you talk about decentralization, federalism is a perfect example for that. In a unitary government, we have the government is actually centralized. In a federal system of government, they're actually decentralized, where we have the executive playing their roles, the judiciary playing their roles, and the legislative playing their roles. When centralization of power, like the unitary, it's just concentrated on one single person. The diminishing of power, it's not the option, it's not the correct option. The fusion of power has to do with parliamentary system of government. Their powers are fused. The president, the powers are fused. Then the concept of federalism implies the decentralization of power in a state. In a federal system, power is shared between a central government and subnational units, allowing for a distribution of authority and responsibility. So responsibility are shared. The executive, they play their major roles, which is they implement the law. The executive implements law, the legislative, they make law, the judiciary, they interpret the law. So powers are shared and there's separation of power when it comes to federalism. Then we come to the next question. The application of judgment and opinion of political objects and events is, the correct answer is evaluative orientation. Other options, cognitive orientation, which is incorrect. Effective orientation, which is incorrect, and parochial orientation, which is also incorrect. Now, when you talk about the evaluative orientation, it refers to the ability to analyze, make judgment, and form opinion about political objects and events based on values, experience, and knowledge. It involves critical thinking about political issues, policies, and leaders. The concept of behaviorism in political studies simply means the correct answer here is study of political behavior. Other options which are incorrect: study of voting behavior of people in a state, study of individual that lives in a state, application of science in the study of politics. The concept of behaviorism in political studies simply means the study of political behavior. It focuses on observable actions, attitude, and decision-making processes of individuals and groups in a political context. The next question is, federalism is a political and economic system originated in, and the correct answer is Middle Age. Incorrect option, modern age, ancient age, historic age. Now, medieval age in Europe, the feudalism actually involved in the medieval age in Europe between the 11th and 13th century. So that's the Middle Age, correct? So it's not in the modern age, neither ancient age, because it's also like, and not also historical age, but in the Middle Age. That was when feudalism developed between 11th to 13th centuries. So feudalism is a political and economic system originated in the Middle Age. It was characterized by a hierarchical structure of land ownership and obligation between lords and vassals. We passed that, I think, when we're reading these options, we came across vassals. So defining social and economic relationship during the historical period. Now move to the next question. Collegiate executive is a type of executive in which power is invested in. The correct answer is committee. Incorrect options, president, monarch, and parliamentary. Now, when you talk about collegiate executive, is a type of executive leadership in which power is shared equally among a group of individuals, rather than being concentrated in a single person like a president or the prime minister. So I think we have to move fast. We're almost done. We move to 41. A general strategy that is used to study a political phenomena can be described as. The options here we have, which is correct. The first option, which is approach. Incorrect options, ideology, process, and theory. An approach refers to general strategy or perspective used to study analyze or understand political phenomena. Yeah, that's approach. Then when you talk about ideology, ideology is a set of belief or values about society. That's ideology, is a set of belief or value about how society and politics should be organized. Then when you talk about process, the process has to do with step-by-step procedures in political actions. Then when you talk about theory has to do with specific explanation, like or model about how or why political phenomena occurs. That's theory, is a specific explanation. So a general strategy that is used to study political phenomena can be described as an approach. It represents a systematic and organized way of examining and understanding political issues distinct from specific ideologies, process, or theories. We move to number 44. The British parliamentary system of government, the monarch can be referred to as, the correct answer here is Queen in Parliament. Other options which are incorrect: Queen in Assembly, Queen in Community, Queen in Legislature. In the British parliamentary system of government, the monarch can be referred to as Queen in Parliament. This highlights the constitutional role of the monarch in legislative process, where laws are made in Parliament with the monarch formal approval. Move to the next option. Financial bill awaiting legislative consideration is technically known as appropriational bill, which is correct. Incorrect options are expenditure bill, revenue bill, fiscal bill. A financial bill awaiting legislative consideration is technically known as an appropriation bill. It is a proposed law specifying the allocation of funds for various government activities, such subject to approve by the legislative body. The next question is: the revolutionary military coup took place in which of these African countries? Take notes, underline that word, revolutionary military coup. Now the correct answer is Ghana. Other options which are incorrect: Mali, Nigeria, and Libya. Now the revolutionary military coup referred to here is the 1957 to 1966 period in Ghana. The coup was considered revolutionary because it ended Nkrumah one-party rule and marked a significant turning. Now, who is this person I just called? Now, Dr. Nkrumah was the first Ghana president. So it was this revolutionary military coup that actually eliminated Nkrumah's. So the revolutionary military coup took place in Ghana. The coup occurred in February 24, 1966, like I said, between 1957 to 1966, leading to the overthrow of President Kwame Nkrumah's government. This event marked a significant political change in Ghana's history. Now, even though the rest options are likely correct, because though the rest of Mali, Nigeria, Libya, they also experienced a military coup, but they were not considered as revolutionary coup. Were not considered as revolutionary coup. So it's only Ghana that was considered as revolutionary military coup. Now we'll move to the next, which is: the colonial policies that seek to change African to white men was a policy of. The correct answer here is assimilation, association, direct rules, indirect rules. So the correct option is assimilation. Other incorrect options: association, direct rule, and indirect rule. Now, the policy of assimilation was a French colonial policy And it's aimed at actually transforming African into French citizens by making them adopt French culture, language, everything about French. They speak, like the way they speak, the way they dress, everything, they adopted it. Now, when you come to direct rules like is a colonial officials govern like directly. The colonial officials, they govern directly. Then the indirect rules, they rule through that traditional rulers. Indirect rule, the British, they were actually ruling directly. But in terms of indirect rule, they ruled through the traditional rulers like in Nigeria. So the colonial policies that seek to change African to white men was the policies of assimilation. These policies aimed at transforming the indigenous population to adopt the culture, language, lifestyle of the colonial powers in the case of aspiring to make African resemble white Europeans. Now we'll move to the next question. The two major colonial powers in West Africa were, the correct answer is Britain and France. Other options which are incorrect: Germany and France, France and Scotland, Portugal and England. Now it was Africa. In West Africa, the two major colonial powers were Britain, which colonized areas like Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Gambia. Now, France and Scotland, they did not colonize any part of West Africa independently. Yeah, they did not. And when you come to Portugal and England, they colonized parts of Southern Africa, e.g. Angola and the rest. So the two major colonial powers in West Africa were Britain and France. These European nations played significant role in the colonization of various West African territories, shaping the region's history and development during the colonial period. Now we'll move to the next, which is African leaders usually attribute African underdevelopment to, and the correct answer is colonialism. Other options which are incorrect: democracy, globalization, hegemony. Now, African leaders usually attribute African underdevelopment to colonialism. The legacy of colonial rule characterized by exploitation, resources extraction, and imposed borders has had a lasting impact on the socio-economic and political challenges faced by many African nations. Now, number 48, post-Second World War nationalism in West Africa was basically geared towards, the correct answer is political independence. Like Africans, they wanted to be independent, to be free from colonial masters. Other options which are incorrect: political integrity, political hegemony, and political socialization. They are not even close to it anyway. Now, the post-Second World War nationalism in West Africa was basically geared towards the political independence. Countries in the region sought to break free from colonial rules and establish self-government, leading to a wave of independence movement and the formation of sovereign nations. Pre-colonial politics in Africa is characterized by, the correct answer is politics of violence. Other options which are incorrect: observance of the rule of law, tolerance of opposition, and peaceful transition. Now, post-colonial politics in Africa is characterized by politics of violence. Many African nations experienced political instability, conflict, and violence in the post-colonial era, often attributed to factors such as ethnic tensions, power struggle, and challenges in establishing stable governance structures. Now, lastly, apartheid regime in South Africa promoted, the correct option is racism and segregation. Other options which are incorrect: rise of Black presidency, segregation and empowerment, Black power and supremacy. Oh no. So apartheid regime in South Africa actually promoted racism and segregation. Like they treated black differently from the white because they feel they are not the same colored and they are not meant to be together. So racial segregation. Apartheid regime in South Africa promoted racism and segregation. The policies of apartheid enforced racial segregation, discrimination, and unequal treatment, particularly targeting the majority black population. This discriminatory system was dismantled in the early 1990s with the end of apartheid. And that brings us to the end of today's section on JUPEB Government 2022 past question presented by Mahadumia Central Tutor. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more JUPEB focused content. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.